Going over IRS Form 7004. This is the application for an automatic extension of time to file certain business income tax information and other returns. So some taxpayers might be looking for the right extension form. This is one that applies to the forms listed here. As a heads up, if you're looking for an extension for a tax exempt organization, that is not Form 7004. That would be IRS Form 8868. That specifically applies to tax exempt organizations. There are other extension forms. We list them all in our articles, and we'll put additional notes in our show notes if you're looking around for the right extension form. This is a one-page tax extension form, and it covers all of these different forms. So we'll briefly review it, and just keep in mind that our article goes into depth about all of this information. So each of these forms has different filing due dates, different extension periods. The general rule is that the tax extension is automatic unless otherwise stated for a period of 6 months. That's kind of the general rule. But there are some exceptions that exist for certain tax forms or in certain situations. So the 6-month general extension period applies to most forms. Filers of IRS Form 1041, which is estate and trust tax returns, they get a 5.5-month extension. And C corporations with tax years that a fiscal tax year that ends on June 30th, they're eligible for a 7-month extension. If they're filing IRS Form 1120 POL, then that would be a 6-month extension as well. So unless otherwise stated in your form specific instructions, generally it's a 6-month extension. So there are a couple of notes. I do go into more detail, but I want to briefly highlight them. So if you're responsible for filing more than one version of this form, then the IRS will not accept a blanket request. You must file a separate Form 7004 for each different tax form. For example, our hero, John Doe, he manages the Doe Family Trust. We've put the information up here, and we've indicated 05 because that's the form code for a trust. If he also had to file an extension for let's say a partnership tax return, which would be Form 1065, then he would have to submit a separate Form 004 to request that extension. The IRS will not send you a notification if your extension request has been approved. They only notify you if your extension is disallowed. So properly filing this form will automatically give you the maximum extension allowed from your tax returns due date. Finally, the IRS may terminate the extension at any time simply by mailing a notice of termination to the taxpayer or the entity that requested the extension. That notice will be mailed at least 10 days before the date on the notice. So, and finally, I just said finally, but finally, this is not a tax payment extension form. You are expected to still submit the payment of any tentative tax due, which you'll calculate at the end of the form. That is expected. There will be a penalty that applies for the late payment of tax, as well as the late filing of your return. So generally, a penalty of 0.5% or 0.5% of any tax that was due that's not paid by the original due date will accrue for each month or a part of a month that the tax is unpaid. up to 25%. That's the ceiling. So if you can show reasonable cause for not paying on time, then you will not be charged that penalty. Let's see. You'll also be responsible for paying interest that accrues on any tax that's due but not paid, all the way from the due date of the original return to the date that the tax is actually paid. So let's go through. So at the top of the form, you'll enter the name, in this case, the Doe Family Trust, street address, city, state, and zip code. If you're using a foreign address, then you'll enter the city, state, or province, and the country. You'll follow the country's practice for entering their postal code. Don't abbreviate the name of the country. So if you were filing this for Mexico, you would write in Mexico in full as opposed to MX or MEX. And then the top right corner, this can be an employer identification number or a social security number in some circumstances if you're an individual. But most of the time, based on most of these forms, there's probably going to be an employer identification number. So enter that. So the rest of the form, we'll walk through this. Line 2 applies if you're requesting on behalf of a foreign corporation that does not have a place of business in the United States. That doesn't apply to this situation, so we'll go to the next one. If you're in an organization where your corporation is the common parent of a group that is going to file a consolidated return, you would check the box on line 3, and then you would attach a statement listing the name, address, and EIN for each member firm that's covered by the application. In line 4, this would be a corporation or a partnership that qualifies under Treasury Regulation Section 1.6081-5. So this includes entities that don't need to file Form 7004 to take this automatic extension, but they must file and pay any balance due by the 15th day of the 6th month following the close of tax year. This includes a partnership that keeps their records outside the United States and Puerto Rico, a foreign corporation that does maintain an office in the United States, a domestic corporation that transacts business and keeps records outside of the United States and Mexico, and finally, a domestic corporation whose principal income is from sources within the possessions of the United States. So there is additional information in your specific form instructions. For example, the extension period would be 3 months for partnerships and S corporations. It would be 4 months for C corporations and filers of IRS Form 1120 POL, which is political organizations. In line 5A or 5B, you'll indicate so in 5A, you'll indicate your tax year. It's either the calendar year, in this case, John Doe's requesting an extension for the 2023 tax year, or a tax year that's beginning and ending on a different date. So this would be a fiscal year if it ends on a date other than the end of the calendar year. If this is a short tax year, if it's less than 12 months, then you would indicate the reason. If it's an initial return for the company or entity, if it's their final return, if they requested a change in accounting period under IRS Form 1128, if they are filing a consolidated return, or if there's some other explanation where you would need to write an explanation. And finally, the last 3 lines, you'll enter your total tax based on your actual tax return instructions. You'll enter the total amounts and payments of payments and credits in line 7, and then in line 8 you'll subtract the difference, and that's how much you owe. So in this case, John Doe, the Doe Family Trust shows they probably are going to have a tax liability of $10,000. They went ahead and made an $11,000 payment, so they're expecting a small refund, $1,000, and that means that they won't have any interest or penalties on the tax that they owe because they won't owe any tax if this is correct. So this form's fairly straightforward, and that's the end of this video for this form. If you want, we do break this down in a little bit more detail. We provide more information if you're still trying to figure out which of these forms you might even be considering filing. We do break this down. We explain each of these forms, a little background information in our article. So if you want, you can hit the link in the show notes, or you can go to our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS form 7004 in the search bar, and you'll see the article appear. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like our YouTube channel and our videos, please subscribe to us today. Just hit the subscribe button in the show notes. If you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything that you would like me to produce a video for in the future, please say so in the comment section. Thank you very much and have a great day.